Do you want some advice on how to accomplish those goals that you have set for yourself? A few years ago, I first hosted the Productivity Virtual Summit. One of the guests who came on to speak with us was Tom Ziglar, who talked about how we can achieve legendary performance and create a positive impact within our lives. Part of that was around how do we achieve our goals and do all the different things that we want to do in our lifetimes. So I'm going to play the clip of the interview I did with Tom over at the Productivity Virtual Summit, and then I'll meet you guys back at the end of the video. You'll see this video is from a while ago because all this setup is not in that video. But anyways, I do hope you enjoy, and let me know in the comments what was your biggest takeaway from the video.
All right. So great to be here. Thanks for having me on.
It's a pleasure to have you on the Productivity Virtual Summit. We're going to dive really deep into achieving that legendary performance that creates a very positive impact. But before we do that, I like to ask the why question. So for you, why did you continue to carry on Zig's philosophy?
I tell you, that's a great question. And I think just sharing that philosophy and then the why behind it. Dad's legendary quote that he's known for is, you can have everything in life you want if you'll just help enough other people get what they want. I love that quote. I take it to heart, and it works in every area of life. One of my good friends and mentors, his name is Rabbi Daniel Lappin. He says that, when we solve a problem for someone, we are often rewarded with a certificate of appreciation, which we call money. So the more problems we solve, the more certificates that we get. And then he also follows it up and he says that God is never happier with his children than when they're solving the problems of his other children. And so when I look at our core philosophy in the context that really what we're doing is we're solving problems, we're helping others be, do, and have more than they thought possible. And that moves us from success, which is worthy. Unfortunately, the world's definition of success isn't always great, right? Because a lot of times it's just money or stuff or whatever. And in the process, you sacrifice your health or your relationships. And so we know that it's bigger than that. So the why is this. And I've internalized kind of my own personal mission statement, which is my goal, my mission is to equip you to change the world and leave a legacy. And so I love kind of combining the success, the significance, and the legacy all into one. That's what gets me excited. And happiness and joy comes when you equip and help others to be, do, and have more than they thought possible. So that's why I carry it on, because it's the most gratifying thing you can do is help someone else be more successful, have more significance, leave a legacy. And it does the world good at the same time. So we're blessed to be able to do that.
Tom, thank you for sharing with us why you continue to carry on Zig's philosophy. I really do love that whole philosophy where basically if you want, give to others what they want. So I really do love that whole idea behind the philosophy. And before we go really deep into creating that legendary performance that has a positive impact, since this is a summit about productivity, what are some great hacks for boosting our productivity?
I tell you, I'll share a story with you. I'd just done a full day workshop, and this guy comes up the end, and he was a young guy. He was probably 28, maybe 30. He had 4 kids under the age of 6. And he said, I really like what you said today. I really think it can help me. What would you recommend that I do? Like he wanted the productivity hack, right? He wanted the thing that would change it all. And so I said, well, there's 2 things. And he said, I'm not doing any of it now. What should I start with? And so I gave him 2 ideas. One is our self-talk card. It's a self-affirmation card. You can get it at Ziglar.com/self-talk. It's free. And it takes about 2 minutes. That's all it does. And you read it out loud, and what you're doing is you're claiming the qualities of success. You're claiming the things that are going to make you productive, because like Seth Godin says, the story we tell ourselves is the most important story of all. And so when you start telling yourself, hey, I've got character and integrity and discipline, and I love to work, and I bring value, and I have a sense of humor. And when you start telling yourself these things, that voice in your head changes, because most people's, their voice in the head is, you're not good enough, or why do you think you can do that? Or, you know what, that's for other people. That's not you, right? So the first thing is we got to change that voice in our head. We got to change the story we tell ourselves. And so what you do is, the first hack is you put the right messaging in. The second thing, and this is all over, it's not just me, but anybody who's into this world, is change the way you start the day. And so I have this thing called the perfect start. And so I'm telling this guy, okay, so the first thing you do, first thing in the morning, is you do that self-talk card, that self-affirmation. It takes 2 minutes. And then the next 12, 13 minutes, I want you to prioritize and plan your day, put your goals in. I want you to think about it and work on the most important things. And it's going to take some pre-work. You got to get your goals in place and do that. And he's like, Tom, man, that's perfect. He said, these are the famous words. He said, but I know me, and I won't do that. He said, I'll start for 3 days, and then I'll stay up too late, and I'll play video online games with my friends, and I'll watch TV until 3 a.m, and then I'll stop. How do I stick to it? And I said, oh, okay, well, because, this guy was like brutally honest. Most people think that. They hear a good idea and they're like, oh, but that requires work. I don't think I'll do that, right? I mean, they have that little talk in their head. And so he says, so Tom, what do I do? And I said, well, let me ask you a question. If you did it, would it benefit you? Now, this guy was very successful. He was in a conference that you had to be successful to be in. And he said, oh, yeah, it changed my life. I said, a lot? And he said, yeah, it'd be significant. And I go, well, define significance. And he said, well, I don't know. What do you mean? I said, well, put a dollar value on it. If you took action on your priorities and your goals the first 15 minutes of the day, every day for, what would happen? He said, well, I'd make a lot more money. And I'm like, well, how much more? He said, $10,000 at least. And I go, wow. I said, okay, well, there you go. Why don't you do it? It's $10,000. And he says, no. I know me, I won't do it. Even though I know it's worth that, I won't do it. So like this guy is like the ultimate of honest. So then I turn around and I say, okay, well, I have a deal for you. This is something that I work with people on. Let me ask you this. If you wrote me a check for $10,000 and then every day for 66 days, you did those two things. You read the self-talk card and you planned your day out. And if you did it every day for 66 days, because that's how long it takes to form a habit. If you wrote me that check for $10,000 and I only gave you the money back if you did it every day for 66 days until it was a habit, would you do it? And he said, absolutely yes, I would do it. And so I said, what's the difference? Either way, it's $10,000. And so that just goes to human nature. So when we talk about productivity, you've got to have a huge, compelling why in order to draw you towards your productivity. And so I always tell people the third thing is you got to start with your why. So it was easy to identify the why in the second case because he just put $10,000 out of his pocket, and the only way he's getting it back is if he does it. But the reality is he'd already told me it was worth more than $10,000 anyway. So the problem isn't the $10,000. It's what that represents. So what's your why? So change the talk inside of your head, clearly define the why, and plan and prioritize your day. So start your day off right. So those are three things that I would do.
Tom, thank you for sharing all those great productivity hacks with us. I mean, those went really deep into the core of what we should be doing with our lives. And earlier we talked about Seth Godin, where the most important story is a story that you tell yourself. And I feel like that's really important for us to tap into our higher performance. But are there any other ways that we can tap into a higher performance than we thought was possible?
And, I've created what I call a performance formula. And let me just explain it really. It's A times E times S equals P. which is attitude times effort times skill equals performance. And so here's the short version of it. Whenever you see somebody who's at the highest level of performance, their attitude is outstanding. It's contagious in all the right ways. They lift a room when they walk in. You know, they really they just have this confidence and this I can make it happen. Now, they don't have to be an outgoing person. They can be a reserved person and still have this kind of attitude. The second is effort. They hustle. They plan their day in the right way. They make sure they're not only working harder, they're working smarter. And so when you combine attitude and hustle and planning, then you get something that's really incredible. But then you add skill to it. And so skill is the system, the technique, the process, the knowledge, how you're going to do your craft, becoming a professional. And so when you look at the top 5% in any category, it seems like they have this ownership mentality. They own their attitude, they own their effort, they own their skill. Now, the opposite is unfortunately what's normal. Gallup poll studies say that 70% roughly of the population is disengaged. At Ziglar, we have a technical term for that kind of person. We call them zombies. And so what does that mean? That means that their attitude depends on their circumstances or their boss or the weather or the traffic. And their effort, it's only the minimum. You know, they're a zombie. They only want to do enough to get by, because why would I do more than that? I mean, you know, why bother? And their skill is whatever they've just picked up along the way and whatever their work has taught them. And so now you've got two different types of people. There's the zombie type person who is just kind of wandering through life. And then you've got the high performer, the person who takes ownership. And so if you were to do a mathematical equation, the average person at best who's disengaged, their attitude's a 2, their effort's a 2, and their skill level's a 2. Well, 2 times 2 times 2 is an 8. But these people who own everything, they're at least a 3. So 3 on attitude, 3 on effort, 3 on skill is 3 times 3 times 3 is 27. That's why, this is the secret as to why the top 5% out-earn everybody else 4, 5, 6, 7 times to 1, because they've taken ownership of their attitude, their effort, and their skill. Now, the other crazy thing about this formula is if you ever encounter somebody with a negative attitude, you actually put a negative sign in front of the attitude. So -2 times 2 times 2 is -8. That changes the equation. Studies have shown that it's actually more cost effective for an employer to send somebody home who has a bad attitude with pay, as long as they do these 3 things. Don't talk to any customers, don't talk to any fellow teammates or employees, and don't talk to any prospects. And that's crazy. Why would you pay somebody with a bad attitude to stay at home and do nothing? Well, from a business owner perspective, it actually saves you money to do that. So that's kind of like the next level of productivity. Master your attitude, your effort, and your skill.
I really love how you were able to break it down into these few critical areas that play a key role in the ability to achieve high performance. And I'd love to go back earlier to Zig's main philosophy, which we said that you could have everything you want if you're willing to help other people get what they want. And I feel like we get that quote, but when it comes to the implementation part, I feel like that's hard for some people. So how can we get better at helping more people get what they want?
The thing I think we have to remember is we have to ask questions, and we have to really dig into the why behind the why. And I'll give you an example. So in our company, we do sales trainings for organizations. And a lot of times the VP of sales will be the one doing the buying decision. And the proposition on the table is we'll come in and we'll do sales training for 25 people. And there's going to be a benefit to that. So the benefit would be that the 25 people, they'll increase their sales skills. They'll close more business. They'll be more profitable. They'll sell at a higher margin. So all those things are really important. So we ask the decision maker, the PSLs, hey, if we did that, what would be the benefit? And the benefit could be, well, we'll make more sales, so we'll make more money. But we don't stop there. We ask the buyer again, well, what's the benefit of making more money? Well, if we hit all of our sales goals and we make more money, then that means we'll be eligible for bonuses and we'll get to keep our job. And so then we ask the next question, well, if you're able to get a bonus and keep your job, what's the benefit of that? And the sales manager might, or VP might say something like, well, that means we can grow. That means that the next year is going to be even better. We'll financially we'll be in a better position. Well, what happens if you do that? Well, then I can pay off my debt. Okay, well, why would you want to pay off your debt? Well, if I pay off my debt, then I can buy my lake house that I've been wanting. Why do you want to buy a lake house? Well, that's so that my kids and grandkids can come and we can hang out. Right? And so that's what we call the why behind the why. And so as a company, we wanted to help that sales team grow, and be more effective. But the real motivator of it is this guy's got a big dream. He wants to spend time with his grandkids at the lake house and build legacy. And so when we understand what he really wants, then we can say, well, how else could we help you get your lake house? Maybe there's more opportunity. And then his motivation for getting involved with us goes way up because now it's tangible, it's real, it's about him and what he wants. And so that's a long way about saying that if we're going to help somebody in this philosophy, we got to understand what they really want.
I really love that idea of looking for the why behind the why, because just asking why like 2 or 3 more times can really reveal a lot about ourselves that we definitely didn't know, and that like even more likely we weren't properly communicating with people who want to help us in different scenarios. And I feel like when people want to increase their performance or increase anything in general, they're looking for an easy way to do it before committing to like some of the other parts of it, but they want like an easy, quick fix right away. So what do you believe is the easiest way to build on our existing performance level?
I go back to attitude, and let me just tell you the way the world normally works and the way it should be. And the way the world normally works is you go through an interview process, you get hired, they bring you on, they start training you. So they're working on your skills. And then once your skills get to a certain level, you know how to do it, then they give you work to do. And in the work aspect of it, they start loading it up and you start doing work. And then they don't really say much about your attitude until it starts to drift towards the negative. And then they give you the threat, hey, straighten up, or we're going to have to do something about this. And so what I would say is the performance focus here, we need to work on attitude first. Think about it. If you work, and I think everybody works for themselves, whether they own their own business or they're in sales or they own somebody else's payroll, you still work for yourself. If you're a leader, a manager, or a business owner, and you have people working with you and for you on your team, when you start focusing on attitude as the key, what happens is when attitude goes up, that automatically drives effort. People with great attitudes who are inspired and motivated to achieve a goal, they tend to work differently than people who feel like that they're stuck, that this is all they can do, that their work doesn't matter. And so what we need to do is focus on the attitude first. So how can we show people, hey, you matter. What you do matters. And it's huge, because when you do your job well, whatever your assignment is, when you do it with the right kind of attitude, then it changes the equation. People come to me often and they'll say, hey, I'm not sure if what I'm doing is what I should be doing, right? They're like a little concerned that they aren't doing the right thing, that this isn't the right fit for them. And I say, you know what you do is important, but why you do it and how you do it is even more important. if you know your why, then it energizes your how, and that increases your impact. And I'll give you an example. When I was a boy, 10, 11, 12 years old, Saturday morning, man, it was great to sleep in. And outside my window, I could hear the of hedge clippers going off about 9 in the morning. And then I'd hear my dad go out there. And Dad was talking to Mr. Smith. Mr. Smith was our yard man. And Mr. Smith never graduated from high school. And he and Dad would go back for like 15 minutes talking about business and the weather and how's the family. And then that day at lunch, Dad would say, oh, man, Mr. Smith's doing good. And he'd always say, you know, Mr. Smith put 7 of his kids through college doing a yard business. And he was contagious. Mr. Smith was contagious. Everybody wanted him to do their yard because he just had that attitude. And so his attitude impacted everything else about him. And so his why was clear. He had a family and a legacy he wanted to leave. He wanted his kids to have better than he did. And so he attacked his business with this incredible energy, so much so that my dad would go out there and they would just inspire each other in that short amount of time. So it doesn't really matter as much as you think what you do. It's how you do it and why you do it that changes everything.
I really love that awesome story, because some people, they may feel like a goal is out of reach, but to not have graduated high school and then to put 7 children through college is something really impressive. I could easily see how, if you're around him, the positivity would be very contagious. And on that same thought of positivity, we have the performance down, but how can we create a positive impact through our performance?
Well, there's 2 impacts, and one of them is obvious, but one of them is more important. The obvious one is that when we perform, we get rewarded. If you have an incredibly high level of performance, no matter what your profession is, whether you're an author or a business owner, sales, doesn't matter, then you're going to be rewarded in the marketplace. People who perform at a high level get rewarded. But here's the biggest one. Legacy is a transference of habit. That's what legacy really is transferring the principles, the values, the wisdom, the habits to the next generation, those around you, so that they will make good decisions that will ripple through eternity. And so Dad transferred habits to me that he never told me about. Growing up and watching Dad his whole life, he would get up at 4:35 in the morning and go into his office, and he'd work for 3 or 4 hours writing and researching, working on his books, doing his speeches, all that kind of stuff. And I used to think he was crazy. I would never do that. Well, now guess what do? I do the same exact thing. And it's not because he sat down and said, hey, this is your key to success. It's because he modeled it. And so when we perform at a high level in whatever we're doing, there's people who are watching us. And when they see us demonstrate and model that, and then they take it upon themselves to do the same things, that energizes and changes not only a family, but a community, an organization. It just keeps going on and on and on. And of course, the bedrock of this is everything that Dad did and everything we strive to do is with character and integrity. And that's the key to what we do.
I really love that message, that character and integrity are really critical to what we do. And I definitely agree with that. And one of the things that I learned was that on the True Performance podcast, an initiative started by Zig himself and continued to this day, it strives to help listeners unlock part of themselves that hold the powers for their lives. And if we unlock that power, we could obviously achieve high performance and create that positive impact. So how do we go about unlocking that part of ourselves so we can move towards our ideal lives?
One of the questions, this is a great kind of just speaker question. You can ask an audience, how many of you here today have untapped potential inside of you? 100% of the hands go up, right? It's just, we all do. We all know, we can all sit down and go, wow, there's potential in there. I need to get out. And there's also, hopefully everyone listening has had this experience as well, where you were involved in a project. Maybe it was an event, maybe it was, something with a deadline, or maybe you were in sports, maybe you ran a marathon. It doesn't matter. But you put it all out, right? You gave it 110, you gave it 100%. You gave it everything you had, and you go home exhausted. And regardless of the outcome, there's that sense of satisfaction that comes over that says, wow, I performed at the absolute best that I could, right? I did everything I could. And so one of the things that I think that we've got to do to unlock that potential is I go back to the initial, we got to input into our mind the right things, the pure, the clean, the powerful, and the positive, the inspiration. We got to change the story that we tell ourselves to say, hey, you know what? We can perform at that highest level. And so what we do is we move into the thinking from, oh, I hope I can, to, wow, I know I can. And so, Dad's standard, and when he would speak, he would ask himself these 3 questions. Did I plan and prepare to the best of my ability? Did I speak God's truth and love? And did I have a vibrant relationship with God? I mean, that was kind of his standard. But the key for everybody listening, is, did you plan and prepare to the ultimate that you could? And that's where I think it gets real, is, do we really plan and prepare to the ultimate that we could? And so a little thing that I do is I say the fastest way to success is to replace a bad habit with a good habit. And so one of the ways we can move towards this is we can look at ourselves and go, okay, what are some little bad habits that I have? Well, a little bad habit could be, watching an hour and a half of TV right before you go to bed. And so you could change that into a good habit by maybe only watching things that benefit you in your personal, physical, or spiritual life. It's not that you don't watch TV anymore. You just make sure that what you're watching is taking you closer to your goal. Even going to bed and getting an extra hour of sleep is going to give you more benefit than just letting your brain drain there. So what you do is you look for little things that are not taking you closer to your goal, and you replace them with things that will. So read or listen to an Audible or something like that. Do something with that same amount of time. And people are like, oh no, well, I watch TV 4 hours a day. Well, don't start with 4 hours a day. Change. Just do 15 minutes. Turn off the TV 15 minutes early and listen to or read something that's going to help you go to that next level and build that muscle. So I think that's how we start unleashing the potential. We put the good stuff in, we envision where we could go, and then we start looking at our life, the little things that we could get rid of and replace with positive things that will help us get there.
I really love the idea of looking at little incremental gains and then continuing to build upon them as you go. And that definitely creates the impact in your life that you want to see and helps you live that ideal lifestyle. And we can create impact through our lives, and we can also create it through our brands. And I'm wondering, with that in mind, how do you continue to impact people with Ziglar Incorporated?
The main thing that I'm focused on now is we have a program called Ziglar Legacy Certification. And ZLC is what we call it for short. And what we do is we equip people. We now have over 200 trainers around the world, 17 different countries, who are certified to go out and teach our courses. And so the courses that they're certified to teach are like building winning relationships. All of life and all of business is about the relationships that we create. Unfortunately, most of us didn't learn that in school. There was never like the how-to program on that. Goal setting and achievement. Goals, high performers, they always have that in common, is they know how to set a goal, work on it daily, have an accountability partner. So we train and teach others how to do that. And then building the best you is all about becoming the right kind of person of character and integrity. So our certified trainers go out and they teach these around the world. And so that's how we impact more people. It's not because, even though we have 4.5 million fans on Facebook and have had over 30, 35, 40 million downloads of our podcast, we're just scratching the surface. We need to equip and empower others to carry on the message. So that's my main focus at Ziglar.
I really love your focus on Ziglar to continue to positively impact the lives of others. And I understand that you're creating this positive impact. You are a high performer, but looking around at some of the pictures in your office, I can tell that you place your family in a very high regard, especially with how you talk about your father. So I'm wondering, how do we achieve this high performance, and yes, we create this positive impact, but how are we able to do those things while being there for our families?
Well, it's about choices and priorities. We teach the wheel of life. This is something that Dad kind of coined, and the wheel of life has 7 spokes on it: the mental, the spiritual, the physical, the family, the financial, the personal, and the career. And to have balanced success, we want to be successful in all 7 of those areas. And so, of course, family is one of them. And relationships go throughout all 7 spokes. And so you've got to prioritize your family time. You've got to put them first. Now, the crazy thing is that a lot of times people are like, well, I don't have time for that. They get, but yet when they're with their family, they're not with their family. They're on the phone, they're on the computer. We know the what we see every day when we go out to eat: 4 people sitting around a table, all texting each other or somebody else and not having a conversation. And so it's about being intentional. And I wish I could, make it in a way that didn't seem so, like status quo, or everybody else has said that too. But one of the things I learned is that you schedule it. You schedule family time, you make it a priority, and you carve out, you make it intentional. So that's what we do with ours. Our daughter is now 22 and she's working. She graduated from school. So we've got a little bit more flex time, but I'm blessed. She's working at a conference this week that I'll be going to. So we'll be there together. And that's one of the things that the Dad showed us, is whenever he would travel and work, he would try to bring us with him. Mom was a big part of that. And so you weave people into the fabrics of your lives intentionally. And if you have a position or a job that doesn't allow that, when you come home, you make your family a priority.
I really love that idea of when you come home, the family is a top priority, because I can totally see people going home, checking their emails, like taking the business with them home instead of fully embracing their family. So I love being very intentional about when we're spending time with our family. And I mean, you have a strong work ethic, you have high performance, you creating this impact, but you also have that bond with your family. And I'm wondering, with all these things, what are you doing to soar higher?
Well, I do kind of like I started the podcast off with the story of the guy. I do what I was recommending to him, is I start every day with the perfect start. And this is the way my perfect start looks like. I get up around 4:30 or 5. I fix my coffee with organic butter and coconut oil. That really, I like that combination. It's kind of that bullet coffee or whatever, but that sustains me until almost lunchtime. I get my cup of coffee, I go in and I do a practice called 2 chairs. And 1 chair is for me and 1 chair is for God. And we have about 5 minutes together. And I ask God 3 questions. Do you know the circumstance? And of course he does. He's God. Are you big enough to handle it? Well, absolutely. I mean, he's God after all. And then the third one is I say, what's the plan? Because we got to listen. So I start off my day with that daily practice of listening to what I should do. And then I do my devotional and reading. That takes about 20, 25 minutes. Then I work in my performance planner, working on my goals, my priorities, what I'm going to get done today. I have a gratitude list that I'm keeping right now. Every day I add 3 new things that I'm grateful for without repeating from the previous day. So I do 66 days of gratitude. And in those 66 days, I'll write down 3 a day. So that's almost 200 things by the end of the 66 days I'll be grateful for. And then I will move into either my one thing or cleaning out my email box. Now, usually I do both. And the one thing I try to dedicate at least 45 minutes to the one thing I want to get done that day. And if I can do all that before 7 o'clock, then I've got a huge advantage on the world. So that's what I do. But I'm feeding my mind first. I'm feeding my spirit first. I'm getting my thinking right. And then I dig into my priorities for the day.
I really love that idea of feeding yourself, your mind and spiritually before you pursue your work, because that's going to give you more focus. That's going to allow you to fully embrace that work. So I really love that idea. And I mean, throughout the whole journey, both of us can account for this. Actually, all the attendees can account for this, but we all face certain challenges throughout our journeys. And I'm wondering, how can we stay motivated during some of the more challenging parts of our journeys?
Well, one of Dad's funnier quotes is, people will say that motivation doesn't last, but neither does bathing or eating. And if you do both of those every day, you'll smell better and feel better too. And so the key is that we know how to keep our spirits up ourselves, right? We don't have to go depend on other people to lift us up. We don't have to have artificial ingredients to change our mood to get us going. We can lift ourselves up. And so one of the ways to do that is just to constantly read and listen to uplifting and inspiring things. If you're really going through a challenging time, then I encourage people to review their victory list, which is all the things that you've done well. Maybe you graduated from college, got an A on a paper, closed a big business deal, just launched a new business. The girl said yes, whatever the thing is, just review that list. And what that does is it starts to change that stress and that feeling of I don't have what it takes into, wow, I've done it before, I can do it again. And so when you have that feeling of, hey, I can do it again, then you start that momentum.
Tom, thank you for sharing all these great insights throughout this session. It was such a great pleasure to have you as the Productivity Virtual Summit speaker. And before you go, as per tradition, I invite all speakers to share one of their resources with us. So, Tom, what is one of the resources you want to share with us today?
Well, let me give you 2. Our podcast, which is at ziglarshow.com. It's on iTunes. You can go to ziglar.com, and we got 5 free gifts. It's just pop up. It's one of those obnoxious pop-ups. Well, no, it's not, but it's real obvious. Get our newsletter. Get one of Dad's greatest recordings of all time. It's a free download, and some other stuff there. So that's how we engage with people. We give things away, and then from there we build a relationship. So.
Tom, thank you for taking the time to share all of your great insights. It was a pleasure to have you on the Productivity Virtual Summit.
Thank you, Marc.